can tell the people that are following us remotely that we have around 10 people in the audience. And I've heard that there are like 7, 8 people online. There might come more people over this following 45 minutes that we have scheduled for this side event. So I wish to welcome, I'm a moderator for this event. My name is Niklas Hedman, and I represent COSPAR. So we have here a panel, we also here on site. We have Jean-Claude Worms from COSPAR, Richard Green representing IAU, President of COSPAR, Pascal Ehrenfreund, and Gongling Sun, who is representing Moon Village Association. And online, we have Giuseppe Reibaldi of Moon Village Association. We also have Ian Crawford representing Moon Village Association in this aspect. And we have Marius Piso representing the International Academy of Astronautics. So the panelists will speak both from here and online. We will have 2 introductory addresses with a PowerPoint presentation, and after that we will go into a discussion mode of the panel. So the topic for this panel is lunar sites of special scientific interest, designation and preservation. And I would like to call your attention to conference room paper 18 to this present session of the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee on the need for the designation and preservation of sites of special scientific interest, SSSI, on the moon. The paper has been put together and delivered by COSPAR, International Academy of Astronautics, International Astronomical Union, and the Moon Village Association. And this is a very technical paper, so please pick it up because it has bearing on a lot of discussions that are ongoing, both in the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee, but also forthwith we will see in CUPUS, namely ATLAC. And we will come to that later. So without further ado, I'm stopped talking now. And I will first give the floor to for some introductory words, first by Pascal Ehrenfreund of COSPAR, followed by Giuseppe Reibaldi, and they have a presentation to screen. So you may screen the presentation. Thank you. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Niklas, and welcome, everybody. We just want to dive right in. We have only 45 minutes. We are really witnessing an extraordinary era for the space sector, and that is marked by numerous moon missions successfully happening in the recent years, of course, but also many planned for the future, and both governmental and commercial. And I just want to introduce COSPAR as one of the organizations which has written this conference paper. We are the world premier scientific organization in space research. And we have been a key partner to UN COPUS for over 60 years with 8 commissions and 15 panels, many different task groups, and more than 14,000 associates worldwide. COSPAR really plays a quite important role in shaping space science and policy because we are covering all domains. So you see us on several panels this week and also next week because we are really covering from planetary science, life science exploration, space weather, and so many subjects, everything. So I want to go to the next slide because I'm just giving introductory remarks. And this is a slide from BryceTech, which shows you it's very recent. It's just a few months. Obviously, it is changing from month to month. but roughly just the fact that there are 150 lunar and cislunar exploration missions planned until 2033, supported by a mix of, you can see that on the slide, of government initiatives, but also private investment, is really remarkable. And of course, we have the two big programs, the NASA Artemis program and the International Lunar Research Station. So something which also triggers, of course, this many missions going to the moon. So I just want to say in the next slide, I just want to say we are many different organizations which look at the scientific aspects. Because if you want to make informed policies, you really need the latest scientific advancements, and they have to be integrated into space policies and regulations. And all our organizations are more or less here in order to support decision makers and governments in order to make the right decision to ensuring that space exploration protects also the interests of future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. Giuseppe, you have the floor.
Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. So it's a pleasure as the president of the Moon Village Association, as a co-organizer of this event, to tell you a few words as introduction for the association. Well, many of you are aware about the organization, which was created in 2017. The main focus and goal of the organization is to act as a platform to bring together multi-stakeholder from industry, space agency, government, international organization, NGO, to cooperate on lunar coordination and cooperation. So this organization is the youngest, of course, of the other, but we have already quite a number of countries participating in many of our activities, and you can see the number over there. We are presenting regularly report to the United Nations COPOS, and also at this meeting of the STSC, we have an extensive reporting of activity. Today, what I will do as an introduction, as Pascal did, is to dive in what the MVA has done in the frame of the lunar governance, which we consider a very important topic, of course, very relevant for UN COPOS. So we created, I hope many of you know, the Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activity, shortly GEXLA, which basically was composed of 40 experts from more than 25 countries. You can see it's really quite a broad distribution and involve all the major stakeholders in the world. And with this group, we have been, let's say, creating for 2 years, working on a document which has been presented extensively, which is called Recommended Framework Key Element of Peaceful and Sustainable Lunar Activity. These, together with many other activities, we can consider as a clear incubator of the ATLAC, which we have seen with great pleasure to be approved. We are continuing with the GEXLA operational phase with a lot of participation. And basically, there are 3 working groups which are busy. What you're going to hear later today is basically most of the work done in the frame of the Lunar Environmental Protection Group. And therefore, that is what is going to be heard later. But we have also other working groups like Lunar Technology Coordination and Lunar Stakeholder. So thank you so much. And I give the floor back to Nicholas. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Thank you, Pascal, Giuseppe, for those introductory words. And we will now straight on dig deep into the concept of SSSI. And I have a question. The first question I have for you, Ian, it's a combined 2 questions, but they are interrelated. So what is the concept of lunar sites of special scientific interest? We label it SSSI. And how could they be characterized? And the second question, why are permanently shadowed regions, PSRs, on the moon so special? Are they of interest both for exploration and utilization? So you have now the platform to expand on those 2 questions. Ian, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Nicholas. Good morning, everybody. So it's a great pleasure to be here. So a site of special scientific importance would be a unique a specific location on the moon that's uniquely suited to a scientific investigation of some kind, and where the disturbance of that environment might compromise future scientific activities. So I think we can identify several such regions on the moon. The first such region is the far side of the moon, which Dr. Green will talk about later. But this is a unique site for astronomy. It's a unique site for radio astronomy because it's permanently shaded from radio interference from the Earth. And it's probably the most radio quiet location in the inner solar system from which to do astronomy. So that's an example of a site of special scientific importance. Another important example are the permanently shadowed craters, so-called permanently shadowed regions, which exist at the poles of the moon. Now, the floors of these craters never see the sun. The sun is always near the horizon at the poles of the moon, and these craters near the poles are in permanent shadow, which makes them very, very cold. And they're of unique importance for several reasons. Firstly, they're the only places on the moon where water ice is theoretically stable. And we've got good evidence now that water ice does exist in some of these permanently shadowed craters. So that ice is of scientific interest for a couple of reasons. One is it provides a record of the delivery of water and other organic compounds to the Earth-Moon system over time, and therefore a record of the delivery of water and other volatiles to the Earth itself. But the moon has preserved this record. The other interesting aspect is that these ices in these permanently shadowed craters have been bombarded by cosmic rays over thousands of millions of years. And this may have induced prebiotic organic chemical reactions, which are of great interest to astrobiologists who study the origin of life. I mean, it's not to say there's no suggestion that there'll be life in these permanently shadowed craters, but the prebiotic chemistry that may have led to the origin of life is relevant and important to study. And the third class would be unique geological features like natural caves, especially lava tubes on the moon. These are unique features which we haven't explored at all yet, and it would be important to explore them before their environments are disturbed. So these would be examples of sites of special scientific importance on the moon.
Thank you. I would then actually go also to look into the special case of astronomy and radio astronomy from the moon, because that is also something that of significant value when we're discussing SSSI. So Richard, if you could tell us why is this unique and this activity, and how can it be preserved? You may also say a few words on the role of IAU.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yes, I'll give a little blurb for the organization. The International Astronomical Union was founded in 1919 and now has close to 13,000 PhD astronomer members worldwide. So it represents the cross-cutting expertise of the field. The moon is of particular interest because it's the best platform for astronomical observations in the inner solar system for several different branches of astronomical science. So you just heard about the low frequency radio in the shadow of away on the dark side. It doesn't see all the massive broadcasts that we make on the Earth. And so that's of interest because the huge redshift of the hydrogen atom allows us to probe at low frequency radio the structures forming in the early universe. Ultimately, to build out the array of antennas that's required to sample that requires a flat plane of anywhere from 50 to 100 kilometers. And so right away on the far side shielded region, we're down to 3 or 4 of such areas, and they might require special protection. The second science that's really exciting is the detection of gravitational waves. If you've been reading and seeing the discoveries of LIGO and Virgo and CAGRA, these gravitational wave detectors, they see the distortions of space and time formed by the mergers of very compact objects with huge gravitational fields. So the mergers of black holes or neutron stars. What's interesting about the moon as a platform is that it's so seismically quiet that you can detect frequencies that are washed out by all the action on the Earth. And it's hard to get frequencies in that range from a free flyer deployment like LISA because they just can't hold station to that same degree of accuracy. So to understand the mergers of white dwarfs, to get a month's warning about the merger of neutron star rather than a day, you want to put your gravitational wave detector on the moon. But you can imagine that mining equipment or takeoffs and landings create enough disturbance that you would need to be far away from that kind of activity. The final one doesn't need much explanation. In the permanently shadowed regions that Ian talked about, it's cold. Those ices have never melted. If you put a 6.5 meter telescope down, like you have all the science of James Webb on a solid platform. And if you put an array of those telescopes down, it has a vacuum 10 times better than what you pull on in a LIGO tube, and you can combine the light waves to suddenly resolve Earth-like planets around other stars, just for example. So the potential as an astronomical platform is enormous, but all of that activity needs to be free of other disturbances to achieve the kind of sensitive measurements that we're looking for. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. And so we have heard now the characterization of SSSIs and also in relation to astronomical sites. And I would like to ask you, Jean-Claude, having heard this, so why should SSSI be designated and preserved? I mean, is there possible conflict of interest with other lunar activities? If you can expand on that.
Thank you, Nicholas. Well, we heard about the science case from Ian and from Richard. So we know that there are various places that require this designation first and preservation, because we need to be able to study to do science in the future. I would even add to that building upon the principles of OST itself, dedicated processes are required to preserve the freedom of scientific use and investigation of the moon, especially in unexplored areas and sites of scientific significance. That's almost verbatim from the treaty. So those are good reasons, and there are additional operational reasons, like doing space weather studies, perfecting our knowledge and forecasting about space weather. You might even conceive of using the moon as a future basis for planetary defense, so better characterization of nearest asteroids, or maybe even a launch base to then have future missions to go and deflect maybe, or at least study asteroids and preserve Earth in this regard. So yes, they do need to be preserved. I think the case is clear, and for them to be preserved, we need to name them. We need to designate what those sites are and what are the reasons for preserving them. Of course, we didn't hear about that yet, but the lunar surface is also important for commercial ventures. And the private operators that want to go to the moon aim at extracting valuable material and resources, which of course makes for potential, possible, almost certain conflicts of interest about several of those areas. And actually, the areas are the same. I mean, the reasons why those people want to be there is also for water and to go to the PSRs and to go to the poles. So there are possible conflicts. And so beyond the designation process, it's also important to have an internationally agreed framework so that these sites can be preserved for science in a way that makes room for exploration, yes, science, yes, but also use of the moon. So we need to talk together basically with all the other stakeholders, because currently the sites of scientific importance are not addressed in any fashion in the existing, let's say, agreements or documents. And of course, since we're on the UN premises, ATLAC is certainly a good vessel to tackle these subjects. So to me, the only way to manage these goals, these needs, and these constraints from very different stakeholders and very different needs is to gather them around the table and to agree on a best set on a set of best practices and maybe a mechanism. I think this was your term, Nicholas, to find a mechanism by which the countries, the member states, scientists, the industries, the agencies, the decision makers can agree to a path forward on how to use the moon and continue to be able to do science there. I talked a lot to industry, and contrary to, I think, our maybe generally held beliefs, most industrial stakeholders actually request such a framework to be adopted because they need to know what they can do on the moon and what they cannot do, if only for liability reasons, but not only for liability reasons. So I think there is will everywhere to do that. So let's start. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. So I would like to continue on this particular topic of a potential conflict of interest between exploration and utilization of the moon. And Marius, now comes the $1 million question. So what could be the role of Corpus in this regard? You may say a few words on what IAA is doing in this area also, please.
IAA, the International Academy of Astronautics, is, I can say, prestigious global organization devoted to advancing astronautics. This is an organization of personalities, not of other organizations. And there are around 1,000 members from almost 100 countries, most of them being COPOS member states. The Academy operates through 4 key sections. Roughly, there are science, engineering, life sciences, and social sciences and policy and management. Most of astronauts are members in the life science sections, and most of heads of space agencies and of organizations are members in the 4 sections, social science. The Academy has a journal, which is the peer-reviewed Acta Astronautica with an impact factor 4, with something like 1.5 million downloads the last year. And we are organizing studies. There are something like 80 studies published and also conferences. And the Academy is able to concentrate professionals in study groups on a specific topics. So this is one of the capacity. If we have topics, we can gather people from everywhere to work at these topics, because they are not belonging to organizations, because the average age is larger than 68, I think, in this moment. The conflict of interest is diminished. Well, another point is, as Nick mentioned, will relate to planetary defense, which is related to COPUOS. The Academy is considering that the moon can be moon presents unique opportunities for planetary defense infrastructure, including, let's say, lunar-based telescopes and detectors. It's obvious that the stable, low disturbance environment of the moon is ideal to install passive and active detection systems to monitor space for potential hazardous objects. Then we can build the near-Earth objects deflection strategies, which moon is quite good. The deflection issue is very sensitive due to, let's say, potential connection to weaponizing. The third point is related to the support of an COPUOS agenda item given by non-governmental organizations. I can remember, and I'm sure that Niklas Hedman is remembering it, that at the beginning of the 2000s, the Association of Space Explorers, so the astronauts, they organized meetings. They pushed basically the insertion of an item related to near objects in the COPOS agenda items. Due to the sensitivity of the issue, planetary defense, it was difficult for one country. All countries, it seems that conflicts will not end ever. And no country was able to push this item. And the non-governmental organization, Association of Space Explorers, they did it. And the item of NUO, I think it's still working from time to time in this in the COPOS agenda. And this might be a very good example for our we can say political initiative, because it is a scientific and technical subcommittee, but this is not a scientific organization. This is a political one, and it is a component of the UN Secretariat. And from the political point of view, I think this initiative to push this at the beginning, the conference room paper, by non-governmental organization might be a good fact, and it might be we should try to attract, let's say, more or less important space powers to this issue under this fantastic non-governmental umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you, Marius. Yes, indeed. You raised here also, lastly, you raised the point of, this conference room paper where those organizations try to stimulate the deliberations in COPOS on scientific and technical basis. And I still want to hear, before we go into other actors outside of the COPOS framework, I still would like to hear if there are any views from you here in the panel on what could be the role of COPOS, and why would COPOS care about this particular topic. Jean-Claude, I think you said already that ATLAC could pick up this because it goes well with the framework of what ATLAC is to look into. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I think it's to me, honestly, it seems to be the only real vessel where this could be achieved. Who is dealing with, continued peaceful use of outer space, if not COPOS? And so this is the natural vessel, in my view, where these issues can be debated, because we are talking about balancing the interests of various stakeholders that have different goals, but we need to find a way for them to coexist and cohabit and work together. And this is the only place, in my view, where this can be done. So ATLAC and COPOS. Yes. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And we will get back to this, because I'm sure that there are people in the audience that would like to express views on this. So before going on around where we also have a comments from the audience, I would like to pick up what was said earlier about the role of not only civil society organizations, observers as COPOS, but beyond that, industry and private sector. Pascal, what do you feel the role of industry and commercial sector in this regard? What role could they play? Do we need to get them within this framework?
Yes, of course. I mean, it's a multi-stake dialogue. We have since, I think, more 15 years now, a space sector which is increasing in actors, and we have to work together. And I think in certain aspects that works also quite well. Space exploration will still be dominated for quite some time by space agencies because they are also giving the major funding. And I think the risk-taking of the commercial sector is really helping. We have seen 155 missions in 10 years. So I think our common focus is really to ensure responsible and sustainable space exploration, in particular on the topic which we discussed today, lunar sites of special scientific interest. And I think in this dialogue, what organizations like ours, scientific organizations, have to provide is really, for instance, to create space environmental databases, because nobody really knows about the different aspects in detail. And NASA has written a great lunar operations report. There are so many challenges which we have to attack while we don't have enough data. That are the challenging posed by landings of spacecraft. These are, of course, surface operations of every kind of different rovers, and how we build a habitat, how we move across the surface. And that, I think, ties a lot with all the discussion which was mentioned today. Also, radio frequency interference, which we haven't mentioned yet today. But so there are so many threats which we actually also don't know, and there are many parameters. And like when we go, for instance, on Earth, and we are building a new big power station or grid, we are doing an environmental impact assessment. And somehow what we have learned, from sustainability on Earth, it would be also important to make these environmental impact assessments. That is also a little bit detailed in the conference room Peter discussed. This would be a natural step. And what we can provide, for instance, for industry, for commercial actors, also for space agencies, scientific organizations, this power of having, 14,000 associates and scientists in many of our organizations, is to provide really latest scientific advancements in technology and in science, in order to inform space policies and regulations that ensure that exploration is sustainable. And in particular, I think the most urgent matter is the moon, because of this enormous amount of missions which are planned. And my last sentence, we have discussed this also yesterday in the Dark and Quiet Skies. The space sector is developing at an exponential and vibrant rate. And we have to work more with data, and this is what we want to provide, for decisions makers, in order to make informed and good decisions by the governments, the delegations here, and because we are the space sector is developing so fast, we really have to help to make these informed decisions. And I think this is what really the scientists, engineers of all those organizations can provide for industry as well.
Thank you. Giuseppe, I know that you are leading Moon Village Association and its project GEGSLA, which is a multidisciplinary platform across social, civil society organizations. And what's your take on the role of those actors, non-governmental actors, including industry and private sector in this regard?
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. Well, I think basically the NGO have an important role of bringing to the table the topics. We know what is the situation and the balance. The decisions are taken by the member states, and the NGO can bring to the table issues. And this is exactly our role. That's the reason why we have organized this event and many other side events. We want to sensibilize basically delegation about those topics. And then, of course, it will be up to the delegation to decide how to move forward. So, and this is basically has been the same as you know for GEGSLA, which to some extent has helped the discussion about lunar governance within the United Nations, and then basically led to ATLAC. So this is how we see the role. And once an organization like ATLAC is running an operation, all these organizations should be able to support when required in a proper way by deeping down in some specific aspect. That's in a nutshell what I see. Thank you.
Thank you. So I intend now to broaden the discussion also with the audience, because I see several familiar faces here that I'm sure have comments or questions. So my open question would actually be to you all. So what is the role of Corpus in this regard, what we're discussing here on SSSI, and what role could observer organizations play? So I see Dorin Pronario, Romania. And by the way, Marius mentioned the ASC initiative on NEOS, and you were the one putting that together. So please.
That's right.
Dorin.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for giving the floor. I'm representing here now the delegation of Romania, even if I'm involved from a long time in many activities connected with the moon and the organization at the international level of a platform, ATLAC. Of course, first of all, I want to congratulate the organizers of this activity. Such workshops, such side events, conferences of this type, they just fulfill the need for more additional information for diplomats, for politicians, even for specialists taking part in COPWAS and having the right to analyze, to propose at home measures and to take decisions in the end. Of course, as the main promoter of ATLAC, I emphasize here the importance of such a platform. It's right in time, if not a little bit late, to start interacting at the international level, to start put together the all important stakeholders dealing with the moon exploration, exploitation, and use. And I'm very happy that ATLAC was approved last year, and now we start organizing the activity. Putting together different member states, important space players, to start sharing information and consult with respect to the moon will lower the risk of different interferences on the surface of the moon and then cislunar space. We have already examples of different type of activities. By instance, last year, the flight of 3-4 objects around the moon on the same orbit, quite similar orbit, and there were some red alarms and risk of collisions. Just because one side didn't know exactly what the other side does. And ATLAC will represent a platform for sharing information and taking measures in the future. At the same time, we will try to set up a permanent mechanism at the level of COPWAS. This is the importance of COPWAS here. To work for the next decades, because the moon exploration, it's not an activity for 2, 3 years, 5 years. It's an activity now for decades. Thank you very much, Nicholas.
Thank you, Doreen. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Guyo Wang, please.
Thank you, Nicholas, for the floor. Good morning, everyone. I'm Guyo Wang from the Academy of Aerospace Policy and Law, Beijing Institute of Technology. So first, I would like to say congratulations, to Ian, the team, MVA for this wonderful research. But also as the council member of MVA, I would like to say it's super important. I mean, this research for the delegates here to discover the potential topics, either under the working group in the legal subcommittee or at ATLAC, STSC, or maybe some potential platform for, to establish a international regime for lunar governance. So I think the research just discovered the nexus, between, law, science, engineering, regarding the potential interest conflicts on the moon. We say exploitation maybe in future, and preservation protection. So as a space lawyer, again, as for all the delegates here, also for the engineering, the diplomats, we have to consider when we look at carefully about the paragraph 3, article 7 of the Moon Agreement, no matter you are a state party to it or not. So talking about the international scientific preserves. I talked with Ian, before a lot about that. I believe the report also pointed out. But the point, the legal question or procedural question for the diplomats here to consider, first, who is qualified to present such a proposal to establish, the protection things? That's the first point. Well, I heard a lot of discussion before, but according to the treaty, only state parties is eligible to present such proposal to COPUOS. I'm not sure whether permanent observer also could do so. That's the question to be discussed. The second, we have to consider the protective arrangements that's the original Moon Agreement saying. What does it mean? Legal meaning, keep out zone, safety zone, or we can subdue, exploit it in the protective manner. So without such kind of legal, I say, obligation, rights, arrangements in advance, then it's hard to just present from only scientific perspective to say, hey, we have to preserve, we have to protect it. What does it mean? I mean, the legal meaning. That should be discussed in COPUOS. So I think that's super important. That's also I think the value of this research is just enhance the awareness of the delegates here, what we should consider further. So again, congratulations for that.
Thank you, Guyu. I see Antonino, you also want to make a comment on this, please.
Thank you, Nicholas, and thanks to all of you for organizing this very interesting side event. I think the topic that you're bringing is very important. The need to balance different interests in lunar activities is something that should be discussed more in COPUOS and outside, and that's something that we are happy to see here and also to support from our side. I appreciate very much the comment from Guyu, and I actually wanted to bring up another question. Sorry, not to have answers, but just to raise another important point, which is under the Outer Space Treaty. So Moon Agreement is the treaty that provides a system, but it's not a very well-recognized treaty, as we all know, and therefore I don't think it's going to be the one that will be operationalized for developing solutions on the moon. However, we do have the Outer Space Treaty, and under Article 1, there shall be free access to all areas of celestial bodies, which is like a fundamental principle of the Outer Space Treaty. So my question for you would be, how would you establish these sites of special scientific importance while still ensuring compliance with the principle of free access? Or do you think we should sacrifice that partially and give up the idea that we will have free access on all areas of the moon, that some areas will not have free access? And how do we balance that with compliance with the treaty? My final comment would be, and I told that to Ian Crawford when we talk about this, be careful what you wish for. Because once we establish the precedent that free access is okay to be broken for science, who prevents industry from demanding the same thing? And then we will just split the moon in a few areas of interest, and everybody will have its own piece, which is exactly what Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty seeks to prevent. So I'm just being a bit dramatic. Hopefully we will not get along that line. But, one thing leads to another. So I would just be curious if we could touch upon these things.
I think you summarized really well the complexities we have before us here. We can only take a few more comments. I see a gentleman in the back of the room. Please, if you tell who you are and you make your comment.
Thank you. My name is Godstime James from Nigeria, delegation from Nigeria. Thank you, Nicholas, for organizing this. For us, we strongly believe that COPUOS has a great role to play in regulating the activities on the moon. We are beginning to see that there seems to be a dichotomy between research and commercialization. And we need to have that clear distinction. If access to the moon is for research, then that perhaps it's something that is remarkable. But if it is for commercialization, then that's a different ballgame. And I think COPUOS has a very important role to play. And the Moon Treaty, as we all know, have not been ratified by a lot of countries, but nevertheless, it is there. So I think the COPUOS should put in place those regulations, let them be there. Whether they are followed or not, it's important that they are there. Everybody knows that they are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Piero Benvenuti, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to answer your question about the role of COPUOS in this, and I see a lot of similarities between what happened with the protection on dark and quiet sky and this aspect of the protection of the lunar side. And as you remember, the permanent observers started this raising this issue long ago, I mean 5 years ago, and then gradually we were able to get many delegation interested to the final point where we had now a specific item in the agenda for the next 5 years and a group of friends that are sustaining this. So in this area, it's quite clear that drawing specific policy and regulation is very difficult because the problem is very complex and there's so many elements in it that it would be actually very difficult to draw a regulation. But we can play an important role in moral persuasion about the importance of protecting something which is very vital for science. And this is the role where we can bring this together with the delegation that are interested in that, and then becomes, something that the country will have to follow because they have to listen to at least. And so I think that it's very important that this is brought up into COP and continue to be until we reach the point where we see what is happening and how we are acting on the moon.
Thank you, Piero. So I would like now to hear from Thomas Schildknecht of Switzerland. This is the last comment from the floor in this event. So thank you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, first of all, for organizing this event and bringing this very important topic onto the table. I think this is exactly what the NGO's role here can be. I have more a question than an answer because I'm a bit scared that, within COPWAS, how do we maintain a holistic view? We have been hearing the problem here is very similar to some of the other ones, dark and quiet skies. We are talking about space debris, the environment around the moon, a lot of similarities with what we are having here as a challenge in lower Earth orbits. We are talking about sustainability. There's so many topics which are dealt with in many working in the expert groups at COPWAS, and I'm really worried. How can we keep a holistic view? Is this now a topic for ATLAC? Is part of it a topic for LTS or for space debris or for dark and quiet skies? I think it's all of that, and I have been working with that system here for such a long time that I would like to see mechanisms, and perhaps Nicholas can help me to do a better job in, as I said, a holistic approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I think you really hit the nail here and what we're talking about. I mean, here we as observer organizations, we put the topic on the table. We provide scientific and technical inputs, and then it's for member states to come to terms and see how to pick this up, and that is really difficult, as we have all stated here. So we have to close this side event now because we don't want to hold you back from plenary, which starts in 10 minutes. Again, I would like to thank the panelists and the organizers for this event, and I would like to thank the audience who had actively participated. And again, I remind you of conference room paper 18, which provides some quite deep loading scientific and technical accounts on the protection and designation of SSSIs. So I thank you very much for having attended this side event, and good luck with the plenary that starts in 10 minutes. Thank you so much again.